Hello and welcome to the Confessions of a Random Doctor podcast. My name's Shweta. I'm a junior doctor who's basically just trying to find her way. So welcome back to another episode. I am so excited to be joined by Shweta Madhu, who is my great friend from university. She's super inspiring and is always doing loads of cool things. So I'm really looking forward to talking to her about this new change that she's made in her career where she's taken a year out of medical school. So I'm looking forward to finding out why she did this and if she's got any advice for anyone that's thinking of doing it and finding new opportunities. So thank you so much for coming, Shweta.
Glad to be here.
It's so great to have you. So you're in Dubai at the moment, aren't you?
Yeah.
Lovely. So can you tell us a little bit about sort of your background, where you came from, why you're in Dubai, etc., etc.?
All right. Okay. So I feel like when you started it by saying you're in Dubai, people are like, "Oh, she's in Dubai." No, I live here, so it's not that interesting. But I'm Indian by ethnicity, but I'm born and raised in Dubai. So I've been here all my life. And then when I was 18, I moved to the UK for med school. So for the last 2016, so 4 years in Notts for med school. And now I'm back because of A, the pandemic, but B, also just taking a year out and having come home to find new opportunities and do new things here.
Lovely. So what are you doing at the moment in Dubai? I know a couple of things that you're doing, but you've always got loads of different hats. So what are a couple of the things that you've been up to?
So that's a bit of a loaded question. I'm not sure where to start with that. A couple of things. I guess like my day job, it's not a job, but I wouldn't call it an internship either, because I know with medicine, like an internship means different things in different parts of the world. Mm-hmm. So in some countries, like an internship is like what we consider our F1 and F2 to be.
Yeah.
It's almost like an unofficial elective. Mm-hmm. So that's what my day job is at the King's College London satellite campus in Dubai. Mm-hmm. So not the university campus, but like sort of a recreation of Guy's Hospital. Mm-hmm. And so I work there during the day and I rotate through different specialties. So far I've done emergency medicine and right now I'm in peds, but I'm more specifically sort of in neonatal medicine right now. Wow. And then I'll be rotating through like obs and gynae, ortho, radiology and a couple other things as the year progresses. So that's sort of my more active in-person role, because the rest of my roles are more sort of work from home or working remotely. Aside from that, I do tutor like pre-meds, sort of school level students who are hoping to get into medicine. So I help them through their application, UCAT, BMAT prep, stuff like that. That's more or less just to sort of sharpen like academia skills, because that's obviously a part of medicine that's quite integral to our careers, not just, if you want to go into academia, but also just, as a doctor, being an educator. What else do I do? So I'm on an operations team. So I didn't know what that was until I started doing it either. But I'm on an operations team for a COVID study at Oxford. And basically what the operations team means is that it's sort of the brain behind the project. So it's the people that are helping the project move along. Mm-hmm. And then under that, we have all of the doctors who are running the project and their students. And then obviously you have the public who are part of the project. So it's sort of a study looking into how COVID has affected oncology services around the world. So it's an international study. I think it's like 100 plus countries, wow. Many, many doctors. So a lot of logistical work. Mm-hmm. But the reason I got involved in that is because I have done a fair bit of research from, a scientific perspective. And I kind of wanted to see what medical research looks like from more of that leadership and management perspective as well. Mm-hmm. And aside from that, I'm also, I work in marketing for Unofficial Guide to Medicine by Zishan Qureshi, which is sort of started as a bunch of textbooks and is now sort of grown into more of like a holistic medical education thing. Mm-hmm. So those are more my medical roles. Aside from that, I'm chilling. Honestly, I'm having a good time. I know it doesn't sound like it, but I'm trying to take a break from medicine and explore, all the other things that I've enjoyed doing.
Mm-hmm. And you do a little bit of like blogging and that sort of stuff as well, don't you?
Yeah, so I write quite a bit, which I've been doing since I was quite young. Mm-hmm. But I think that has taken on more of like a blogging role now versus it was more like journalistic or creative when I was younger. Mm-hmm. So just trying new things from existing hobbies and then rekindling existing hobbies and stuff like that as well.
That's amazing. I'm sure there's like a couple more that you've forgotten as well. There's Psych Start.
Oh yeah.
There's too many, isn't there?
Yeah, there's quite a few things going on.
So what made you want to take this time out and do all of these different things?
So obviously it started with COVID.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't actually consider taking a year out. So all throughout COVID, I got back home out of uni, mid-March.
Mm-hmm.
And up until like August, I wasn't going to take a year out. So I actually started the online version of my final year. I was, attending online classes, doing all of that. And then, I mean, my mum would joke about me taking a year out. I think, just being a mother and having her kids halfway across the world during a pandemic was kind of bumming her out a little bit. And my brother is in America, so I think she just wanted like me to stay home, but it was always kind of like a joke.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until we had a meeting with the university where they kind of, updated us on COVID guidelines and what they expect of us coming back. And I was talking to my best friend after that, who's a non-medic who lives in Dubai. And he kind of was like, why don't you just take a year out? And I realized that I had absolutely no answer. Like there was no reason why I shouldn't.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of that got me thinking about it. And I primarily did it because I'm high risk for COVID. And because I'm high risk for COVID, I wouldn't be allowed to do certain parts of my placement had I gone back. So things like critical care and stuff would have been really difficult for me to do.
Yeah.
And it would have been really difficult for them to facilitate as well, especially with, PPE shortages and this and that. And so I felt like going back would be quite a large academic disadvantage, because while I would be graduating with the rest of my cohort, I would have had significantly less exposure than them.
Yeah.
And then I'd be sitting the newly formatted exams the way they changed them, and not because of the pandemic, which would have added more stress. And then had I got COVID, obviously, if I did need extra medical support at the time, it would have been really difficult for my family to come across the world. The travels would not have been easy. And so overall, it just seemed like the right decision to make for my physical health, my mental health. And very importantly, I think it was the right decision to make professionally as well, even though it now means that all of my plans have like an extra step. There's like an extra year. So instead of graduating in 2021, I'll be graduating in 2022. But I think it was the right decision to make. And having seen how that's progressed over the last few weeks with my friends going back into placement and what they've experienced, I think I have made the right decision. All worked out.
I'm so glad that you feel that way. So when you say that you think it was the right decision professionally, what did you mean by that?
I think with medicine, both within medicine but also relative to all of your friends that might not be in medicine, I think there's always like this pressure to achieve things by a certain deadline, achieve things by a certain age. And I think our generation runs off of that a little bit anyway. And so especially like with all of my non-medic friends who are primarily in finance, I'm seeing them getting 6-figure paid jobs right out of uni at the age of 21. I'm still in uni, and I'm not going to get there for a long time.
A very long time.
And it can be kind of, I guess it can be quite stressful internally, having that dialogue of, I have to achieve XYZ by this amount of time. And it was actually quite interesting when the pandemic first happened, at least at Nottingham Med School, for the first few months, we didn't really have online classes or anything. They sort of told us to basically take like an unofficial holiday. And I remember talking to some of my medic friends, and nobody knew what that meant. Everybody sort of was sitting at home being like, I don't know what to do now that I'm not at med school.
Yeah.
And it was quite sad seeing that. It was almost like our entire lives were built around medicine. And now without that, we were all just sitting at home with no hobbies and no personality, just staring at the screen, doing past med for fun. And it was really sad. And that's the thing, like, obviously med school and everything you learn at med school is foundational to your career. But I think everything outside of that makes you who you are, there are a set of transferable skills that come from that as well. So I think all the opportunities, both medical and non-medical, that I've been able to chase in this year off, whilst maintaining my health and, finding interests outside of medicine, I think holistically that's going to make me a better doctor. And so I think that's primarily why I would say it's been the right call professionally.
That's amazing. Yeah, I completely identify with what you were saying. I found that straight after graduating, that the first couple of weeks I kind of didn't know what to do with myself. Like I'd forgotten all of my hobbies.
Yeah.
How do you rediscover those hobbies? Did you ever find that you lost them?
Well, I always was very conscious of the fact that I lost them. I just never did anything to get them back for a couple of years, because you get so busy with med school, and then the time that you're not on placement, you're studying, and the time that you're doing neither of those things, you're trying to maintain some semblance of a social life and take care of yourself, or bank stuff and laundry and cooking and stuff like that. That you don't have a lot of time to chase the things that you love to do. And for me, like, for example, end of last year, I picked up weightlifting and I really enjoyed it.
Wow.
But to make time for that during med school, I would have to go to the gym at like 5 a.m. It's cold and I don't want to do that. It took the fun out of my hobby.
Yeah.
And so I always knew that I lost them. I just always told myself, like, oh, I'll find the time later. And then later never came. And it's 4 years later and I hadn't done anything. So it was sort of like when I got back. So when I landed in Dubai, there was like a 2-week quarantine period, in which time I live with a lot of high risk people as well. So I was kind of holed up in my bedroom. And it was really in that period of time that I was looking for things to sort of stimulate me, like intellectually, things to do. And I picked up reading again. I did like online courses and all of this stuff that I love that has nothing to do with medicine, like interior design.
Oh, wow.
And I started like rekindling all of these like interests and passions, and it's been a lot of fun. I feel like I've learned a whole lot. I feel like I'm a very different person. I think we all are very different people from the start of this year, but I think it's been a lot of fun for sure.
Mm-hmm. So we spoke a little bit about how the pandemic has kind of changed your opinion on certain things and allowed you to reflect and explore these different things. Do you think that it's changed your opinion on the way that you want your future career to play out?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. I was kind of afraid of what you were going to ask me there, because it seemed like you were leading up to a really deep question. But no, I mean, it is a deep question, but I think I definitely do agree with that. I think interestingly, less so from my own decision to take a year out, and more so from seeing people around me, because at med school, once you get past like third year and all your non-medic friends graduate, and then your life gets quite caught up in placements, you're typically surrounded by medics who, even though we all come from different backgrounds, and I'm very grateful to have a fairly diverse set of friends. Having said that, now that we're at med school, a lot of the things that we do in our mindset and the way that we spend our time is quite similar. And medicine as a career path tends to be a little bit more set in its way than, if you were to do any other degree and then you have your host of opportunities after that. And so when I came back, like I said earlier, a lot of my friends are non-medics, and it was kind of seeing their reaction to the pandemic, graduating into, a terrible job market, graduating into so much uncertainty, but coming in with that, age-old mindset of, if I don't have a job at 21, I've achieved nothing. And it was kind of seeing them struggle with that got me thinking about how I definitely don't want to ever be of that mindset.
Yeah.
And so since then, I've kind of made a conscious effort, because I do tend to be, I get this comment from my friends a lot, I do tend to be quite type A about my career, which is very different to how I am with every other aspect of my life. So typically I tend to kind of just go with the flow, and I don't really mind, where the wind takes me, I will go. Okay, I don't mind. But professionally, like, since I was maybe 13, I've had like a 5-year plan always.
Oh, wow.
And that just changes as I go through my life and experience more, and like my needs and wants change. But there's always a 5-year plan. There's always a 5-year plan.
Amazing.
And being so stuck on that, and obviously now that entire 5-year plan has become a 6-year plan because of the year out. And I've tried to make more of a conscious effort to engage with my life in a way that's greater than academia and greater than my career alone. And I think that's happened for a lot of people throughout the pandemic, where they've realized that, you can work all you want, you can find all the joy that you get from your job, which is always a wonderful thing. But end of the day, what you come home to is what matters most. And you come home to yourself. Yes, you come home to your family and friends, but you come home to yourself. And so I've found a lot more interest and importance in sort of investing in myself before I invest in my career.
Yeah.
So I definitely do think the pandemic has, in many ways, positively impacted how I view my career and stuff.
That's amazing. And what did you think I was going to ask you?
I don't know. It was like leading up to something really big.
How do you feel the pandemic has altered your life view?
Yeah, I was like, wow, okay. I need a minute.
But it kind of is the same thing, isn't it? I think we sometimes view our career as totally separate to our life, but really they are so intertwined. And I think if you want to create the optimum career, you need to think about your optimum life, don't you, to be able to put them together.
Definitely.
So once you had kind of spent this time reflecting and you, like you said, investing in yourself by doing these courses and all that sort of stuff, where did you go to kind of find these opportunities that you think you might have been interested in?
So a lot of it came down to networking, and obviously virtual networking given the situation. a lot of the opportunities I found off of LinkedIn, actually, which I think is a really underrepresented platform for medics.
Yes.
I've heard a lot of medics and doctors say things like, oh, what are we going to do on LinkedIn? I've actually found every single opportunity I've ever got in the last few years off of LinkedIn. I found mentors off of LinkedIn. I found medical students who are extremely inspiring off of LinkedIn. I do think it's had a massive impact on the opportunities that I've had and the things that I've pursued. So I definitely strongly suggest that all medics get onto LinkedIn. And I got all my housemates onto it over quarantine as well.
Yeah, I noticed.
I got a whole bunch of my friends to get on LinkedIn. I was like, you have to do it right now. It definitely has been very, very useful. And it's also very insightful to be able to engage with people around the world who are in some ways doing a very similar thing to you, but coming from completely different backgrounds and with completely different objectives. And so LinkedIn's definitely one. Twitter is another one. I didn't have Twitter until like 2 weeks ago, but apparently the med side of Twitter is incredibly funny, but also there are a lot of ways to engage with a community via Twitter, as there are with any social media. And so a lot of the opportunities I found were through social media, basically.
No, that's really cool. I think, like you said, most medics aren't on LinkedIn, at least the ones that I know. It was a bit weird when I first got LinkedIn. Everyone was just like, why are you spending time like putting your whole CV on LinkedIn? And yeah, I feel like I've learned a lot through seeing your LinkedIn. I'm always like learning something new.
I'm glad I can help. I mean, I was always like that person in my friend group where everybody would be like, oh, what's your favorite social media? And everybody would be like, Instagram. And I'd be sitting in the back like, low-key LinkedIn. Hey, low-key. No, I do think there's a lot to gain out of the app. And I think it can be a dangerous place to be sometimes when you see people achieving so much and you compare yourself. I think it's the same as say Instagram with lifestyles and bodies and things like that. It's the same thing with your career on LinkedIn. But end of the day, I think at least the medical side of LinkedIn has really encouraged this approach of like complete honesty. And so a lot of people will share their failures alongside their successes, which is always really like welcoming to see. Not because they failed, but it's nice to know that we're all in the same boat, having a little bit of both. It's a very encouraging community if you allow it to be. I got a message like a month ago from a medic at Cambridge. He's a fourth year medic, I think, in Cambridge, and he's an entrepreneur. He has his own company.
Wow.
And he messaged me on LinkedIn. He's like, oh, I came across your profile. I'm like, you do so much. How do you have the time? Like, it's really inspiring. And I looked at his profile. I was like, what are you talking about? First off, you go to Cambridge, you're obviously very academically in tune with what you're doing. You own a company, you're doing a million other things. He was intercalating at the time, and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm glad I give you that impression. It makes me feel better about myself in the message. So it can be a really encouraging community if you allow it to be and if more people engage with it in the right way.
So do you have any top tips for them to boost their LinkedIn game?
Oh God. Okay. I mean, I think, everybody has to start somewhere. And the way that the LinkedIn algorithm works is that, as you get on the app and you start interacting with other users, it automatically just shows your profile more on, people who have similar interests to you. They come across your profile. And it's quite easy to grow on LinkedIn as opposed to a lot of other social media, I think, just because of the way the algorithm works. And so if someone's joining LinkedIn, it's really just about, just get on there. Just make an account, put your CV on there. It doesn't matter what your CV looks like. You don't need 10 positions. You don't need, wonderful grades. I don't have wonderful grades. I'm still on LinkedIn. You just put what you need to put on LinkedIn. And then once you have a bit of, your page set up, try to engage with people. And you can engage with any sort of people, because at the end of the day, the way the algorithm works is it shows you content that makes sense with your profile. So say, you put the university that you're going into or the job that you have, it'll show your profile on the feeds of people who have those similar sort of roles and positions and educational background. But as long as you're engaging, and that can be as simple as like, go add your father on LinkedIn, it can be anything. But as long as you engage with people on LinkedIn, you will grow. And I think going out of your way to engage with medics, start with your friend group, start with your university, and then start with, maybe you met somebody at another university at a conference or something, go add them.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as creepy to add somebody you've never met. Like, the way you would do on Instagram, like, don't do that on Instagram. But I don't think that's that weird on LinkedIn. And so I think it's about like being confident and not letting it get to you at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, I definitely identified with what you said about sometimes, you're scrolling through LinkedIn and it can sometimes make you feel worse about yourself. Like you feel like,
Yeah.
oh no, I'm not doing enough.
You do need a detox from it every now and then, for sure. For sure.
So speaking about this King's College London in Dubai opportunity that you're doing at the moment, how did you approach someone about it, or how did you even think that that's something that you wanted to be doing?
So I knew it was something I wanted to do because I wanted to still engage with clinical medicine just to stay on top of med school. When I go back in April, I do have to sit exams, and just to keep on top of everything and to keep in the loop of clinical medicine. So I knew I definitely wanted to do some sort of like placement or elective or something like that. The way that I found this particular opportunity, I used an approach very similar to what I did a few years back when I had quite a long summer in my preclinical years, and I didn't want to spend 3 months at home. And so I found myself a research internship of sorts in the oncology division at Singapore General Hospital, I think it's called. It's a group of hospitals, but I'm pretty sure it's called Singapore General. And so I caught the eye of a doctor there. I emailed a bunch of places, and this particular one happened to get back to me, and I was able to spend 2.5 months there, and it was amazing. And so I used kind of a similar approach where I kind of like drafted an email, explaining my circumstances, explaining what I want to do. And Dubai is a young country, it's still growing, and its healthcare is fantastic. But in terms of like training new doctors and internships and placements and stuff like that, those opportunities are still lacking. And so it was a little bit difficult to get in touch with the right people and to explain, what I actually wanted from them. And so I sent out emails to about 20 facilities, at least like 20 hospitals. And I made sure to choose sort of like more tertiary level organizations. And I heard back from about 2 or 3, did interviews with them, checked out the facilities, and I ended up choosing King's because they obviously have an NHS affiliation. A lot of their staff have come from the NHS. The guy who interviewed me, the chief medical officer of this hospital, he came from Manchester and he used to work in the med school there. So a lot of them have also had experiences in teaching British medical students or Britain-based medical students. And so I thought it would be more up my alley to be in a facility like that, where they do use sort of nice guidelines. They do know sort of what's relevant to me and what isn't. Obviously, given geographical difference, there is a slightly different patient base and things are done slightly differently here. But because the doctors have come from the UK, I've been able to learn a lot from them that is very applicable to my course and my future career in the UK. It's kind of how I went about it. Network. I did it through LinkedIn.
LinkedIn made me. So would you normally sort of find them on LinkedIn, drop them a message on LinkedIn to introduce yourself, and then follow up with an email after that? What's sort of the step-by-step process?
So step by step, what I initially did, which worked for Singapore, but it was less useful here. I'm not sure, maybe it's just the difference in places. I'm pretty sure the pandemic had something to do with it. But my initial step was to sort of draft an email saying, this is who I am, these are my circumstances, this is what I want to do. Can you help me, or can you put me in touch with the right people? And I collected the HR emails of a bunch of hospitals and emailed those out. I didn't really hear back from those. Those are difficult to hear back. It did work for me for Singapore, but for like 2 out of like 20 hospitals. So it's not always the easiest way to do things, but it can be a much smoother process if you just go through HR.
Okay.
And so in a lot of places, I do think that would work. I think the pandemic just might have slowed things down. Simultaneously, I wouldn't say that I did this after. I did this kind of at the same time. I sort of drafted a message and I went onto LinkedIn, and I don't have like LinkedIn Premium or anything, which basically means that I need to be connected with somebody before I can send them a message. And so what I did is on LinkedIn, you can type in like the name of any organization and it gives you a list of all the people who work there. And so I put in the name of, a couple of the hospitals I really wanted to work at. And it gave me a bunch of people. And one of the junior doctors at King's then connected with me on LinkedIn, and I got in touch with her, and then she put me in direct touch with the CMO. So it was quite easy to go through that route. So again, I think using LinkedIn to your advantage. A lot of it comes back to LinkedIn, to be honest.
Love it. This is like just an ad for LinkedIn, really.
It really is. It really is. If they want to sponsor me, I'm not even big on social media, but if they want to sponsor me, I'll do it.
LinkedIn influencer over here. Okay, so you already mentioned that, you are glad that you've done this. So if someone's listening that is currently in medical school, or a junior doctor like myself who's considering taking a year out at some point, why would you say that taking a year out has been an important thing?
So, I mean, I don't want to give the same sort of advice or thought process that I went through, because mine was obviously very attached to the circumstances that we're in right now. Had it not been for COVID, I don't think I would have made this call, because I was quite comfortable with the way that my course was going. Having said that, I think taking a year out can be beneficial for so many reasons. Like I said, I think holistic development is not something that's prioritized in medical school. And as important as it is to build on your clinical knowledge and your practical skills and all of that fun stuff, I think it's really important to also grow as a person, and be able to add something into your career out of, who you are and what your interests are. And I think it makes engaging with patients also a lot easier when you're more than just a doctor. And so I think taking a year out, if you feel like you have almost got too sucked into med school and you feel like you need the opportunity to explore your options, explore the things that you love, and explore, even within medicine, explore other avenues of medicine, things like academia and research and management. Digital health is something that I, did a little bit of a course in and learned more about. So there's so many other things to medicine that's not just clinical medicine that you can explore. Apart from that, I also made this decision because of, my physical health and my mental health and things like that. And I think that's a really big factor. Obviously, medical students are a very, very high risk group for having, mental health issues. And obviously, doctors are not exempt from getting ill themselves. And many medical students also have chronic illness. And I think prioritizing that is really important. End of the day, like, if you can't care for yourself, how are you going to care for your patients? And so recognizing that you need to take time out for yourself, if that's the right thing to do, and then taking that call regardless of what the rest of the world may think, or regardless of what your friends are doing. End of the day, we're all probably going to end up in the same place. We're all on track to become doctors. That doesn't mean we have to do it the same way or do it at the same speed. You just have to do what works for you. And I think that's my biggest advice, is just like listen to yourself and nobody else. So even when I made this decision, okay, don't listen to nobody else. Like, when I made this decision, I didn't tell anybody, like including my mom and dad. I didn't tell anybody that I was considering taking a year out. I kind of sat with it for like 2 days and kind of, made it like pros and cons list.
Love it.
Went through all of my options in my head before I introduced it to my mum and dad. And they're obviously very relevant in making this decision, not just because obviously they're my family, but they also do finance my degree and therefore have a lot of say in, what happens with said degree. I didn't tell any of my friends that I was going to do this, because obviously there would be sort of biased outcomes from that. And so I made the decision primarily keeping in mind that I didn't want to be swayed by other opinions, because it was a difficult decision to make. And I was not set in stone either way. I was kind of on the fence. And so I didn't want anybody else to influence me to go either way. And so it wasn't until I made my decision that I told other people. And I think that's really important, is, get advice from the right people, get advice from, people like the higher ups of your medical school, get advice from the people that know and love you, and get advice mostly from yourself. But end of the day, like, don't let other people influence the decision that you make just because they're not making the same decision, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, wow. You put it so eloquently, honestly.
Thank you.
One last thing I wanted to ask you was, you mentioned all these courses and stuff that you did. Was there a specific place that you went to find these courses, or are there some specific resources that you would guide people towards, apart from obviously LinkedIn?
Online courses, I think right now in today's climate, it's really easy to find them because a lot of educational institutions have moved in that direction. But prior to any of this, so when I did my online course, which I did a couple like before applying to med school as well, I think, so Coursera, it's spelled like course with a ERA at the end. Coursera is a really popular option. It's primarily American universities, if I'm not mistaken, but they do have some brilliant courses from obviously, very well-off institutions like UPenn and Cornell and places like that. Cornell and Harvard both have their own like online education systems, but they can be a little bit expensive. So obviously it depends on accessibility, if that's something you want to do. FutureLearn is sort of the European but primarily British version of Coursera.
Okay.
So FutureLearn is where I did the digital health thing. It was Public Health England and the University of Manchester did a course on digital health, which is really interesting given that that's probably the direction that medicine is going to take across the world. And so I think there's a lot of options, and you can do free courses, by the way. So Coursera, FutureLearn, all these places, a lot of the courses are free, and then they have sort of like packages that you pay for and certifications and all of this other stuff. But I would like to think that it's quite accessible. Obviously, you know, given people's circumstances, I am in quite a place of privilege to have been able to take this year out and then engage with all these different opportunities, because I come from a background that's able to support me in doing so. And that may not be true for a lot of med students, but I think if you have the opportunity, or if you're able to find the opportunity to access these things, I think it's always a good way to go to learn something new and learn something different.
Of course. Thank you so much. See, you're just so eloquent. Like, you're so well spoken. I love it.
Thank you.
I'm so thankful that you came and you spoke about all of this stuff, because like you said, I think it's not always spoken about, that there are other options, and just everything you said, I'm like, preach. I just completely agree. Thank you.
It's always nice when people agree with what I'm like rambling on about, because sometimes I just keep talking and everybody's just staring at me like, what are you saying?
No, everyone's just like all inspired. They're just amazed. Thank you so much. I'm so glad
I could help.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I hope people will find it useful.
I'm sure they will.